Hello, colleagues. In this video, I would like to cover how to do and to present review of literature in a journal article. Once again, let us focus on what happens when a scholar in the global south, outside of the North American, Western European context, tries to review scholarship in order to communicate the findings of their research from their context to the global audience or the North dominated venues. When they do that, there are several challenges. On the one hand, there's so much to read, there's so much knowledge on any given topic. But the connection between existing bodies of knowledge in other parts of the world and the research that you're doing may not be straightforward. Obviously, you're not going to present a universal truth. For example, let's say you are working on a curriculum project called, let's say, the collaborative teaching curriculum project. You're trying to experiment with what happens when university level teaching happens collaboratively. Is it more effective? Let's say you're reading a bunch of journal articles from Japan and India and UK and US on how other people have done that in the past. But the conditions and the context and the variables of the Costa Rican research may be very different. And therefore, what do? Are you going to connect the existing bodies of knowledge from other parts of the world in order to compare what you did and what you found in your local context? Or are you trying to generalize what you found for a global context as if all contexts and conditions are similar and collaborative teaching is the same everywhere? So that adds a lot of challenges for the scholar of the global periphery. But let us look at the general ways in which people do literature, and let's try to address the question of how do you do literature review in a way that engages the outside reader, the international reader, in your positioning, your scholarly positioning. When it comes to the basics, very basic ideas about the literature review, first of all, why? A lot of people think about focus on how to do it, but they forget why they're doing it. I would like to flip that order by putting the why question first, why we do literature review, and then what is it that we do? What are the tools and skills that we need? And then finally, process, of course, the how. How do we do literature review? The how, not only in terms of the technical process, but also in the intellectual process. In terms of why, the answer is we do literature review in order to advance our research agenda, in order to position ourselves in the scholarship in the field, in order to connect, enter the conversation. And in order to do that, we try to situate our research, our ideas, our arguments in the context of the existing body of knowledge. Imagine you're going to a particular venue, scholarly venue, like a conference or a discussion or a seminar. There you're presenting and you're pointing to some people and saying, oh, those people said this, they said this, they said this. Here is what I'm contributing. That's basically literature review, right? Even though we don't point to people, but rather to dead people and the articles and written documents, it's creating conversation with existing conversation. And so therefore, what it is that it's a tool, it's a means, it is a strategy toward a purpose. Literature review is not the goal of academic writing. We don't review to review. We don't review to summarize, right? We don't review to present the outline. We review because we have a different purpose. I'll get to that in a moment. But in order to do that, you need some technical tools and some intellectual skills. I will also get into that. Let's unpack the first point that I made. Literature review is never a summary or even an annotated bibliography. If you simply summarize, dump existing scholarship in the form of commentary or in the form of summary or in the form of description, it's not going to work. It should not be so-and-so said this, so-and-so said this, so-and-so said this, they said this, like, so what? It should be framed with a purpose, which is, here is what we know so far. Here is what is not known. Here is what people in that context have said. And you're doing that because you're trying to bring in a new perspective or new finding or new idea. The second point that I want to make before we go into a little more detail is that literature review is not only used to show the gap. There are a lot more functions, and showing the gap is only one function of literature review. So it may look like you are doing literature review to show how knowledge is developed or changed on a given topic in the field. That's fine. That's sort of showing the scope and showing the landscape and showing the space within which you're going to situate yourself. That's fine. But beyond that, you're also showing the gaps, patterns, or relationship in existing knowledge. That's fine too. But you're still not getting at your purpose, right? It is also possible that you're doing literature review to demonstrate your knowledge before you can situate yourself in the field. Especially when students are writing dissertation, they write a long literature review just to show that they know the field. But these are not the purpose-driven moves in a literature review. The real literature review begins to happen in a journal article when you use literature review to set the context of your work. Here is what I'm doing. Here's how others have addressed this issue already, and here's where we need to advance the conversation. That is where literature review begins to get into the critical advancing of your research. You may do that in order to outline the scope of your own work. Here are the things that we know. Here is the boundary. Here are the boundaries. Or you could justify the context or scope of your work by using other people's ideas. So you bring other people's idea to set the context or set the scope. Then you also bring other people's ideas to and review their ideas in order to establish your own theoretical framing or to build or justify your methodology. So in other words, you say, here is the theoretical framework of my research, and I'm building on this person, building on this idea, building on that concept, and building on that perspective. So you'd be borrowing the tools of other people to create your own framework, parts in order to create a machine. Or in order to build your own methodology, you're using the tools and instruments from other people. So that is where purposeful literature review begins to happen in your writing. That is more impactful than simply summarizing other people's ideas. Similarly, when you write a journal article, you might show by using other people's idea that your work has a solid disciplinary foundation, establish the significance of your work. Sometimes you might give credit to other people just to show where you stand in relation to others, or sometimes you might make an argument through synthesis by bringing different ideas together and advance your own argument, especially to show where the research on the issue needs to go. So there are different ways in which you do literature review or different purposes of literature review, and showing the gap is only one function of literature review. So I wanted to highlight here that the literature review has many functions. The basic functions are showing how knowledge is developed, showing gaps, or demonstrating your knowledge. But the more critical functions of literature review have to do with establishing your context, establishing a theoretical framework, developing your theory, showing your work's disciplinary foundation, giving credit to others, and making an argument. These are the more critical functions of literature review. And remember, literature review is not necessarily always one big block of a chapter or section in an article, but literature review also can take the micro form where you review the existing scholarship in one sentence or one paragraph or half a paragraph alongside your own writing. That's why you will see a bit of review in the discussion, a little bit of review in the introduction, and there may be a whole literature review in the literature review section. So literature review is not necessarily a separate segment. It could be small rhetorical moves that you make with sentences or paragraphs or half a paragraphs here and there along the way. And let's get into the nitty-gritty of how. Some of the tools that we need in order to do literature review include these. One is we need a library database where we'll find journals and books and news items. Sometimes you go a little deeper beyond the library database into the archives in the library. So that's one source, one tool. The other tool would be other databases like search engines, Google Scholar, etc. Another one is conference papers and proceedings, or manuals and handbooks, that type, not journals, but non-journal sources or non-book sources. And then the next one can be organizational and governmental data sources, such as documents, repositories, websites, archives. You may also want to find trade and professional association magazines that may not be in the databases. In some cases, you may be looking at trade association white papers. In other cases, you may be looking at patents and applications for patent documents, if that's your field. Data sets may be available with private companies or public foundations. These are data sets such as in economics and social sciences or engineering. One other tool that I know is very helpful is the search alert. If you go to Google and set up an alert for curriculum or collaborative or assessment, it will send you whenever something is published in that domain. Listservs, mailing lists are also important. If you sign up and become a member and read the ongoing conversation in the field where people are posting new publications or new conversations or having debates, that's also a source of information. You may not cite in the same way, but this is a good source of information. And nowadays, people use social media posts and discussions and blogs and podcasts and whatnot. And then there are citation management software like Mendeley and RefWorks. I didn't list here, but artificial intelligence is coming up quickly, developing as a mode of research. AI tools still don't really have good access to the big academic databases. So they tend to find sources on the internet or one or two small databases that have been connected on the back end. And they make much bigger claims than they actually can do. In fact, AI generate fake fictional sources, and that is really risky unless you can double check with actual sources. Don't use AI sources because as of 2024, they are not doing a good job of finding actual sources. Very often, like ChatGPT, they'll make up completely fictional sources. There are some specialized tools for literature review, but if the back end is not a full access to the academic databases, the Google Scholar databases, or conference paper databases, or proceeding databases, they don't have access to industry data, they don't have access to government data, they don't have access to professional association journal art. And with an extremely limited amount of data fed into the data set, the AI companies are making massive enormous arguments about how they can find every knowledge in the world, but actually they don't have access to anything but very small amounts of data. They may have billions of words, but words from where? Words from Wikipedia, words from Reddit, words from junk internet websites. So I'm not going to trust as a scholar the claims made by AI companies that they have access to massive amounts of knowledge. That's another field of my specialty, and I don't trust them. So be careful. Don't believe that they find actual sources. It may happen in a few years, not yet. All right. So the other how is the intellectual skill set, which we need. Like I was saying, we need to find, tools in order to use them effectively to find sources. One is to learn how to use applications effectively, whether it's a database in the library database, find filters, find the delimitations, find keyword searching, find Boolean search, find search methods, consult a librarian. These are very, very important skills. And it's not only one searching in one kind of database, it's also searching with the use of many different applications. So these are the first 2 points. Then setting alerts, as I said, using social media, learning how to network. And one of the things that I really value a lot is to go to the expert in the field and say, treat them like a machine and say, you are the best search tool that I know. I'm working on this topic. Can you give me 10 or 20 top citable sources? They sometimes can filter through better than any machine and give you the top 20 most important sources in the field, right? And the other one is to also not a one-way traffic. Literature review and learning how and situating yourself is also back and forth. You present some ideas and people will give you feedback. You find more sources based on the feedback, and then you go and search and expand your search. Working with a writing group is also a good way because they will have some ideas in addition to the seeking a single expert mentor. Then once you do all of these things, you need to learn how to track, organize your sources. One of the things that I do is a word table like this, where I put the citation reference and I put either the abstract or the juicy quotations. And here I write my own annotations, notes. And if I develop my own personal data set of ideas, then you can sit down and write much more quickly, much more easily. So creating an idea bank is extremely helpful like that. And then finally, another skill that is really helpful is assessing, ordering, and eliminating sources. You might use Microsoft Word, you may use Mendeley, or you may use other tools, but organizing, finding patterns, finding themes, and finding your position in the existing literature, taking notes, making plans, that intellectual skill is very important. It is not enough to know the technological tools, but you need to use the technological tools with very savvy intellectual skills. So that's the process of literacy review. But when you begin to write your literacy review, let's look at a general approach. First, of course, we select a topic, and the topic may evolve or change along the way. And then we find out how much knowledge or research exists on it. It is extremely important to read purposefully and strategically. When I'm doing literature review, I do not read things normally. When I'm looking at the list of findings on a database, I just look at the title, and if the search words are not right, I change the search words until the titles look, these are the kinds of things that I'll read. So I don't read the abstract, I don't read the articles, I'm just looking at the title. And whenever I find something that looks okay, I just pin it. In databases, you can pin so that it'll go and save itself. I'm not going to go deeper. Once I find titles that look like very useful by, let's say, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 titles, then I begin to filter them out by eliminating articles that are not the most relevant. At this stage, I might quickly read the abstract in about 1 minute. So if there are 100 articles, I spend 100 minutes. That's it. Then beyond the abstract, if I have selected top 20, I will read those top 20 carefully and put them in a folder called A. And if there are next 20, I may or may not read, I call them B, put them in the B folder, but I will not read them carefully, right? And then the rest of the 60 will go into a backup folder. I might come back to see if I can find some more. Otherwise, I will not read the 60. I'll just read the 20 carefully. The 20 I'll read quickly, I'll skim through, and the remaining I won't. So that's order and hierarchy is very important, but please don't spend too much time in the process, but rather spend time in the annotation, writing on the margin, and creating the word table with generating the ideas. If you can engage the top 5 or top 10 or top 20 very, very well, the others can be more passing citations. So don't do quote and run with all the sources. Go deeper into some of the sources so that your main partners, collaborators in your intellectual project, the top 20, top 5, top 10, are given a full paragraph or half a paragraph in the writing process. And as I said earlier, organizing. That's very important because it helps you to see patterns in existing scholarship, develop a theme, or position yourself. Once you develop your preliminary argument, you can return to the initial process of looking at it one more time, because once your argument is developed, it's like a lens. Your argument will help you to find more and better sources afterwards. So there's a cyclic process. Number 1 to 5 can be very iterative cyclic process. And once you identify gaps and needs or something that you need to apply new knowledge to, that's when your project will begin to move forward. You don't go back. So be careful, don't go back too many times, right? Once you're ready to make an argument and move forward with your evidence and discussion, you should. Then write the review. Reviews can be written before you have done the research most of the times. Don't hesitate. If you're procrastinating, write the review. It will help you later on. And in the process of writing review, sometimes you might update certain things like the framing or the topic, and always use the all caps method of tracking what you are trying to do. Here, I discuss this line of scholarship in order to do this. In this paragraph, let me do this. In this paragraph, let me do this. If you use that method, the literature review will become purposeful, organized, and it'll get a focus and flow. And sometimes you may need to repeat, as I said, back and forth. And this is the method that I use. I find my sources, so I don't have to go hunting in a pile of sources. They're all in a searchable personal database. And I also put my abstract or juicy quotations here so I can cite with a number. And I separate my ideas in the third column so that I don't mix up and plagiarize unintentionally other people's ideas. And sometimes I use this sorting column. If it goes to chapter 2, then it's 2B, it's the second part of chapter 2, the first part of chapter 3, or the fourth part of chapter 4, if I have this and I can sort the whole table by the last column, it'll be 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D. And then this way I can sit down with the table, the source table on my screen, open a new document and write. Just copy, type, copy, and type. It becomes very easy. This table is very helpful to organize the process from reading to note-taking to writing that guides you. So finally, one last thing. When doing the literature review, think about different things you're doing, again, to emphasize the importance of looking at literature review as not only simply summarizing other people's idea, but engaging existing scholarship with a purpose of doing something in your own article. This is by Joseph Harris, the scholar who has written the book, Read Writing. It's a powerful, small, powerful book. He says there are 4 things you do when you're trying to connect with existing scholarship. The first thing we do is to come to terms. We show our understanding of the subject. We situate ourselves and position ourselves. That's number 1. Number 2 is we're trying to push forward existing scholarship. So we are doing literature review to show that we are trying to push something forward by providing new evidence, new perspective, new context, new data, new discussion. The third one is push back, not forward, which is here is what other people have said, but that's no longer true. Or in my context, here's something new. Or that may be a good idea, but not always. So it's not simply disagreeing with other people, that is complicating other people's ideas, and that's called countering. And finally, sometimes we just borrow the method or we borrow the key terms in order to use them, to reapply them in our own research. So these are some of the ways in which we position ourselves in relation to existing scholarship. This is how we cite and engage others' ideas. So to summarize again, it is important to make a literature review more purposeful and impactful, especially in the international writing context. It is hard to situate yourself without having a sense of purpose. Once you have a sense of purpose, then you can begin to see what tools and skills you need in order to situate yourself. It is very helpful to start looking at the more critical functions of literature review so that you are not simply summarizing other people's ideas. You are engaging other people's ideas with a sense of purpose to engage the particular audience, so that you're very conscious of what you're presenting, not only being dominated by other people's ideas. There are different tools that you need. There are different skills that you need. And this is a general approach or process. And this is an important tool that I use. And finally, just to highlight, we do different things when we're engaging with other people's ideas. Hopefully, this will help you to draft your literature review. We will be working together. Just keep writing. Write when you are reading, write when you are summarizing or critiquing, and write when you are drafting. Write. Writing is your tool. It will help you to research. It will help you to review. It will help you to situate, and it will help you to advance or present your ideas. Thank you very much. Gracias.